we may finally know how many people are actually playing World of Warcraft. And it's a number that personally shocked me. It's bigger than I thought, it's bigger than you probably thought. It is 9 million. But that may not actually even be the whole story. It could even be a bit bigger. So what happened is, and it's a bit weird, but we dug around and we found some kind of shocking numbers. In fact, based on what I'm about to tell you, WoW may have more subs than ever before. And I know that sounds insane. If I was in the other end of this and I was watching the video, I would be ready to hit the dislike button and say, dude, what the hell? What the fuck? That's a load of bollocks. But no, we got stuff to talk about. It's just one of those things where I'll tell you how this could possibly make sense, even though it really does not feel that way, because I was around when WoW was reported to have 9 million subs, and I can definitely tell you it felt different. Now, have you ever rolled a fresh endgame character, inhaled a few guides, and done rubbish DPS because basically you're still new and you haven't actually practiced? Well, back in the day, that's how coding, when all you were really doing is a university course, kind of felt. But with today's sponsor, boot.dev, you're going to get both the best way to learn backend development and one that is made specifically for you, a gamer. Quite literally, because Boot is structured like a community RPG. It is one with soul, and the founder, Lane, actually hit me up years ago because he's also a WoW player and he's designing it for people like us who want to learn back-end development. Back then they were new, but now over 750,000 students completed 33.7 million lessons. And Boot is all about learning back-end development from the fundamentals through to advanced career-focused training. You'll be doing personal projects for your portfolio and guided projects, like this really fun one of making a Pokedex. But here's what actually matters: knowing the real fundamentals. It's easy to fire up, say, V0 or Cursor and make some cool, as they say now, vibe-coded stuff. But very often, well, when you do that, you may not know the fundamentals. That can often lead to funny and security nightmare-like results. But with Boot, well, you'll actually know the fundamentals, and the learning paths are in either TypeScript or Go, which is a fantastic thing. I'm so glad they added TypeScript. It's all well designed, super motivating because of the RPG structure. It's got goddamn boss fights in it, and it's really fantastic. You'll get 25% off your first purchase at boot.dev/bellular, and if you're not happy, well, they will refund you on the spot with a 30-day money-back guarantee. Remember the WoW orchestral concerts from last year? Well, back in July, there was an announcement trailer for another one over in France. This was a trailer that almost nobody saw, and that meant that nobody noticed a really important thing in that trailer, because at the very end of it, it revealed that WoW has got 9 million players. And that may seem a little bit sus. Seems sus to me, but trust me here, this does actually make sense, and I'll tell you why. You see, last year, thanks to a slide from a GDC talk, we estimated something kinda surprising. This video got us a lot of interesting comments, but basically via some fun extrapolations and reading graphs and things from the slide, it seemed to me that WoW had more subs than any of us would have guessed. At the time, over 7 million. Now here's where it gets interesting. After we dropped our video, Windows Central independently verified it, where their sources said that the estimate that we came up with was, quote, roughly accurate. Now remember, this was way back in March 2024. It was right at the end of Dragonflight, just before Season of Discovery Phase 3. This new number of 9 million players, well, it was revealed at the end of July this year. But you do need to note something. It says players, it does not say subscribers, and that's important because they may be reporting their monthly active users, and that may be including free trials. I mean, I've always assumed there's about 7 people playing the free trials, but I guess WoW's a fairly big game and most people would start with a free trial, so who knows how many people that could be. But the numbers that Windows Central sources verified were subscribers. And if this new number was subscribers, it would mean that Blizzard added another 2 million over just the last year. And you know what? That's fairly possible, because 2 major things have happened. There's the fairly obvious one of the War Within, which has not been a perfect expansion, but I think most people would say it's been a great improvement over our recent trends. It gave us our first exciting villain in years, that certainly helps, that would have brought people in, and most importantly, it fixed a lot of long-term problems and I would argue this is maybe the biggest thing, added delves, which would have opened up repeated month-to-month gameplay to way more people than before. Because, yeah, even if you're not into Mythic Plus or raiding, you got a thing to do. On top of that, there's the 8-week patch cycle, which means that it's kind of hard to find a time to unsub. And I've even got some stats to support that as well. Dragonflight Season 3 was, in fact, the best season of Mythic Plus ever at the time, where it opened with over 3 million Mythic Plus runs in the first week. Here's what's wild. The War Within Season 3 opened with over 4 million, which is an entire third more. That's huge. Now, interestingly, raids have taken a bit of a dip. In Emurdersil, 15,110 guilds cleared the first boss on normal in the first 10 weeks. But in Manaforge Omega, that actually went down a little, where it's actually, right now, under 1,400. But I actually think that helps make my point. People who want gear used to have to raid. Now, they can just go and do delves. People who just wanted to see the raid ending, well, they've now got story mode. So with this in mind, lower raid participation from guilds does make complete sense. And that's been visible all expansion. And also that it's only down 10% is surprisingly good, especially when the entire casual player base is no longer rammed into full raiding. So with those metrics and a bit of common sense, yes, I think the War Within is definitely doing better than Dragonflight, at least compared to the same point when that 7 million was previously reported. But there's obviously something else, and that is Classic. That 7 million came after Wrath Classic was over, and when Season of Discovery was about to start Phase 3. That would have obviously had an impact on short-term subs, just like Hardcore did. So let's compare to today. Season of Discovery is over. MoP doesn't look super hot in terms of player numbers right now, and the other Classic servers seem a little bit stagnant, which ain't great. But this 9 million number is not from October, it's from July. And in July, there was an almost perfect overlap, because that is when Season of Discovery was doing its amazing last hurrah with Phase 8. And it's also when MoP Classic had its pre-patch. So I think across all versions of WoW, 9 million subs in July actually does make sense. But there's an elephant in the room, one that makes the story a bit crazier, and that is China. You see, at the time of our GDC panel 7 million subs, WoW was still dead in China, so that sub count was from Blizzard alone, not NetEase. But since then, Chinese players have returned to WoW in droves. So the question is, are those people included in this big 9 million number? It technically is possible, yes, that it includes NetEase's subscribers, but I actually don't think so. I think that combined, WoW is actually bigger than that, and there is some evidence to suggest so. Just over a year ago, the Warcraft logs owner said something striking, that he was certain WoW was at an all-time high player count, and he said this based on the sheer number of Ulduar logs that were coming through from the NetEase servers. Basically, it turns out that they really loved having WoW back, where they had 11 million unique characters. Now obviously, 11 million unique characters is not 11 million players, because people roll alts, but they actually roll fewer alts than you think. If you take a look at data for Azeroth, you see that 52.3% of people in modern WoW play one character. Now, that's not super reliable, obviously, but it is safe to say this: the average player does not raid with tons of alts. Only a fraction of players ever actually reach max level in raid, especially in Wrath of the Lich King. So realistically, NetEase could have, 4 million or more WoW players? Which is honestly a bit of a conservative estimate, because again, the 11 million unique characters was from raid logs from World of Logs, so that's a high enough bar to clear that would not catch loads of random alts and stuff that people would be making. Now, if you think that's unreasonable, remember something. 2 million people pre-registered within just the first 2 days, so yeah, a lot of people in China were very excited to have Wrath of the Lich King back. Obvious reasons, that was all pretty huge over there. But just to make sure that they didn't all, do Ulduar and then abandon the game, Matt took a look at Warcraft logs because he wanted to get just more robust numbers for us in this video. Now, sadly, all I've got here are parse counts from the last 2 weeks, but they are still rather shocking. So first, I took a look at Manaforge Omega on Heroic, where it had a total of 1.85 million parses in the last 2 weeks. Now, over in China, Icecrown Citadel Heroic had almost 8.1 million. So, those motherfuckers love their World of Warcraft. That is almost 4 times the raiding population, and all in the China-only Wrath of the Lich King servers. And remember, this is 3 months after Icecrown Citadel launched, so it would have been far larger on its actual release day. Kind of crazy, right? And that's just Wrath of the Lich King. They've also got access to Classic Era, Hardcore, MoP, and the War Within. So with all of these factors combined, I think it's easy to say that NetEase has still got millions of players, and that the 9 million number I talked about earlier probably isn't including NetEase's stuff. Now, if numbers alone don't convince you, do remember this. Over in China, they're about to get their own unique thing called Titan Reforged Classic. And just last month, Ian and Clay addressed the Chinese fans directly. And in that address, Ian said something important. That was that Titan Reforged was their team's main focus for the next year, alongside MoP and Modern, of course. But the implications of that are kind of insane. Now, think about what that means. It means that even after NetEase is cut, the Chinese classic audience brings in so much money, enough that Blizzard can actually give them their own unique content. So, when you think about it, that actually may mean that WoW has passed its old peak. Okay, let's bring everything together. At the time of the GDC panel, which was the end of Dragonflight, Blizzard had around 7 million subs. That was initially a number that I calculated based on a GDC talk, but then Windows Central sources said that that number was roughly correct. And we've now seen the 9 million number as of July. And yes, it is possible they could lie, but you get in a lot of trouble if you do that as a publicly traded company. So if they did lie, then maybe our friends at the SEC would have something to say about it. Now, we don't know exactly what that number is, but I think it's not a stretch to say that it was current Blizzard subscribers, probably excluding China. Remember, 11.2 was along the way, Season of Discovery, Phase 8 was recent, MoP Classic was about to launch. If you add at least a few mil from NetEase, then we could be looking at anywhere from 11 million subs up. Now, back in early Cataclysm, WoW's highest ever reported sub count was 12 million people, and that included China after their delayed Wrath of the Lich King launch. And that means there's a possibility here. That is, that WoW, earlier this year, was bigger than it has ever been before. All, of course, before midnight, which is promising player housing, and a world without add-ons, which obviously is controversial to current players, but could be huge in re-engaging lapsed fans, because to them it would mean, holy shit, World of Warcraft is fundamentally different. Maybe I should check it out. And of course, adding to all that, WoW has got more approachable combat than ever, and they're even trying to get rid of the nightmare hellscape that was the worst of Mythic Plus. All that put together means it's not a stretch to say that WoW, right now, may be bigger than it ever has been. But you know it doesn't feel like that. I know it doesn't feel like that. And that's because it ain't like that. WoW may be the biggest it's ever been, but culturally, that's just not the case, because a lot of shit has changed since 2004. During the peak of WoW, everyone knew about it. I mean, come on, we got a South Park episode, we got the big name celebrities, the Prince of Darkness. Now, not really. I mean, you don't see WoW talked about on the news anymore, so how can it possibly be the same size, never mind bigger? Well, the answer is it's all relative. One factor here is that the pie is bigger. And when I say pie, I mean the games industry and the number of people playing games. There are so many more gamers in games than ever before, and I'm not just talking about the casual mobile gamers. You see, 12 million used to be a humongous chunk of the market, but now it's absolutely tiny. I mean, here's how many people used Steam when WoW was at its height. 3 million. Yeah, actually it was well under 3 million people logged in at any one time. Right now, it's peaked at 41 million. And that would mean that for World of Warcraft to be as relatively strong compared to Steam as it was back then, we would currently need like over 100 million subs. That would be for it to be the same relative size as it was back in 2010. At least compared to Steam. And then for an economic comparison, just look at this. Analysts claimed that in 2009, WoW was 10% of the online games market and that it had earned 1.5 billion. Now, in 2025, the total games market is 189 billion. Removing mobile, it's 86 billion. And that would put 2009's WoW at a measly 1.75%, not the estimated 10% that it was back in 2009. And put simply, that means the world is a lot bigger now. And because of that, WoW is a smaller part of the world, even if WoW is actually doing better than it has been in many recent times in the last decade. Now, the good news is that WoW is still making tons of money. That's obviously why Blizzard keeps on investing in it. It's why they've put a lot into making that team bigger, as opposed to what had sometimes felt like chronic underinvestment, maybe because the company was betting everything on a little MMO successor called Project Titan. Now, that's one reason why WoW does not feel as huge as it probably is, but there's another one, and it's this. WoW is actually 5 different games in a trench coat that are all siloed off from each other. Of course, logging into your server does not feel as big and bustling and populated as it did back then, because even if we've got the same number of subs, we are split between so many different versions of the game. Back in 2010, it was 12 million people split across two versions, Kata in the West and Wrath in China. But now, we are split across a ton of different versions of the game, in different regions of the world. We hang out in different comment sections and subreddits. Back then, my guild had a website, not a Discord server. So yes, the communities are literally all smaller, and that is the price to pay for us having different experiences that are tailored to our preference, all within what World of Warcraft is. So if anything, if I were Blizzard, I would try to make people actually feel like WoW is as big as it is, and apparently doing as well as it is. And if you want a very different experience in Warcraft story, then Midnight may actually have that in store for you, because we scoured the alpha for all the story, all the lore, and that means if you don't mind major spoilers and you'd rather just want to see, are Blizzard actually taking a big swing? Are they willing to go hard? Well, this next video will answer that question.